welcome everybody to Ascension to Depth. I didn't get the chance to record another episode this week, but I did get the chance to have an interview episode with my mom and my sister, and we were doing it in celebration of Mother's Day. We got to ask my mom some questions, some really spiritual ones, some really not so spiritual ones, and so we really enjoyed it. I had a great time recording with them. It was for Tuvos Radio, but I enjoyed it so much that I want to give it to you guys, and definitely not because I totally forgot to record a new episode. But I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that this helps you understand your mom a little bit better. I hope that moms, you understand your children a little bit better if you're watching this. And I hope that you are blessed by this interview episode. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope that you enjoy. Hello, thank you so much for taking the time to tune into this episode. And thank you so much, Tuvos Radio, for providing the platform for us to be able to conduct this interview. I'm joined today by my mother and my sister, Tere De La Rosa and Marie De La Rosa, and we are going to dive into the relationship that parents and children should strive to have, why it's important for communication, and why it's important for us to establish relationship going forward in our lives, not just being stuck in a present moment. And we're going to get into all that, and I'm very excited. Thank you, both of you, for joining me. I know that it's hard to have a real strong relationship when we're long distance, me being in Illinois and you guys being in Florida, but we still managed to do it. And so thank you so much for being here. Let's start with talking about why it's important for a parent and a child to have a relationship to begin with. I know that it's Bible ordained, and I know that Jesus talks about children all the time in his ministry, but I would like to get you guys' opinion before we get into the question. So, Mom, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Of course. First of all, let me greet everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be with the Two Voz Radio audience and also with my children in this interesting time that we will spend together. And my answer to your question is that when you establish a good relationship with your children, you have your best friends. You become great friends. You can count on each other for life. And I believe that is beautiful and very essential.
Marie, why don't we go to you?
Yeah, I really think it's an amazing tool to have that the Lord has given us. These parents that we are blessed with, especially our mothers, since we are celebrating Mother's Day, it's an amazing tool that we have. She is a confidant, she is a best friend, she is someone that I can depend on, and someone that I can count on for future advice, for tips that I need later on in life and in my walk with God. So it's just an amazing thing to have, and you really depend on her and count on her for absolutely everything.
Right, absolutely. I think that parenthood provides children structure. And I do want to add a note to what we're going to be talking about. It doesn't necessarily mean your biological parents. I know that for a lot of people, sometimes whether you've lost a parent or you're not in communication with them, we are going to be talking about the general basis of a relationship between mother and child. And we're not going to be getting into things, for example, abuse, things that abandonment along that nature. And so I want to go ahead and structure the interview in a way that we are talking about a general relationship between mother and child. It may not be your biological mother. It could be a church mother, a friend's mother, somebody that has that role in your life. And it's still a special bond, whether or not you are related by blood or just related by love. And so me and Marie are going to go ahead and ask our mother questions. We thought it would be a great idea to really get into the mind of a mother, especially with Mother's Day coming up. And so, Marie, go ahead and start with the first question.
Yeah, so our first question is, what's your happiest memory of being a mother?
I have amazing memories of being a mother. This has been the most beautiful experience, and I gave birth to four children, and the most beautiful thing I believe it has been when I received them in my arms for first time. I have that vivid memory of each one of my children being given to me having them in my arms the first time has been the most amazing thing ever.
Our next question is, what is the first year of motherhood like?
Well, the first year, I remember when before I had my first child, which was Omar, my oldest, I was very scared. I was young and I was wondering, will I be able to do this? Uh, I was worried about bathing him. I'm gonna be able to do it. Will I know how to hold him, how to feed him? But in the moment that he was born, it was just, it came naturally. It just came naturally. It was things that nobody taught me. Yes, people give you advices, people try to guide you through it, but it's like God did it so perfectly that in the moment that you get that baby in your arms, you just know what to do. And the first year was great learning to be a mom. And then came my second, my third, my fourth, but everyone was a new experience. And everyone I learned new things. And the first year of every one of them um, was a beautiful experience of learning, not only learning how to be a mother in general, but learning how to be a mother for that specific child and be able to fulfill the needs of that child and to engage, communicate with that child.
I know that there's a lot of books and a lot of literature out there of how to be a good parent, how to be a good mom, how to be a good father. And I know that it's very easy today, especially with all the information out there, to follow step by step by step by step. But especially, Omar is 30 something years old. Back then, it's not as clearly laid out. And I'm sure that as you had more of us, the fear starts to go down a little bit just because you've been through this before. But did you ever find that there was a specific way to do it? I know that you mentioned that learning how to be a mother for this specific child is different than being a mother in general, but I'm thinking about somebody who is about to have their first kid, somebody who's reading all the books today that, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, and the other. As a mom who didn't have that, and like you just mentioned, that first year of parenthood can be really scary most information, the more information you have. And so is there something that you would say to a mom that is about to go on this journey, who has all this information but is still scared?
Do not be scared because, like I said, with that child, you will learn at, at how to take care of that child, how to fulfill the needs. And yes, there's a lot now, and for everything, there is a YouTube video. For everything, there is a book now. And back then, even though we did have some resources, they were very limited, not as many as nowadays. But the what I find a little bit difficult when we depend on the videos and on the resources is because every child is different, and what probably worked for one mother, it won't work for me. Even having different children, what worked with Omar didn't work with Douglas or didn't work with Joseph or Marie. So yes, it is good to educate yourself. It is good to to get like a general idea of how to do things. And especially dangerous things that you need to avoid, or how to hold the baby to, to burp the baby, or how to lay down the baby, which is something that usually changes. Like before, they said to lay them on a certain way, then not put them on the side, no, never put them on the belly. So it's like things will change as they discover new methods, and
Mhm.
they realize that certain things that we used to do could probably put the were not safe for the baby. Yeah, it's good to learn all that, but be ready for the adventure that your new child will be. Don't
Right.
get frustrated if things won't work one way or another. Just learn how to take care of your own child, and for the new things that you will learn from that baby.
How do you, as a mother, establish and keep a line of communication open with your children?
Being friends, learning to listen to each other, to understand each other, spend time with each other, and trust each other.
I think that before we move on, I do want to dive into this a bit deeper because it's something that I do want to mention is that while we are friends, we're friends now and we've established a relationship that has made us friends, but I don't think that the objective of the relationship between child and parent should be to be friends. I know that respect is probably the most important part of that relationship because there has to be a level of authority there and there has to be a level of submission there on the child's part. And so can you get into that a little bit and how to navigate that as a mom in the sense of like I'm want to be friendly to you, but I also, I need to be able to tell you what to do. I know that you mentioned listening. And
Mhm.
so can you get into that a little bit?
Something that I always tell my children is I want to have a line of communication open. I want us to be friends, but I don't want you to forget who is in front of you. I am your mother, and you need to respect me. I will respect you as a person, as a human being, as my child. I will respect you, but especially when could be tension in a conversation, remember who you have in front of you. I am your mother. And sometimes we want to become best friends with our children, and because we are afraid that that won't happen, we let them disrespect
Mhm.
us, and that's wrong. We cannot let that happen.
Right.
I am your mother. You need to respect me. And but like I always said, and I'm going to repeat that, don't forget who you have in front of you. And but also, um, if we keep the line of communication open, listening to each other, but also knowing that if you are doing something that is putting you in danger, if you are doing something that will harm you, I am your mother, and I will need to correct you, and I will need to take any measures to stop you from any destructive behavior.
Right.
So we need to have that clear. We need to have that clear. Um, and also, it's very important the fact that, and when I say to listen to each other, I know that, and I'm gonna say that, and I know that Marie will agree with me. Marie went through a hard time in her life when I wanted her to speak to me. I wanted her to open up, and I'm like, speak to me. You can trust me. Talk to me. Talk to me. And then in the moment that she started doing it, immediately I started with a sermon. Immediately I started talking to her, and I will never forget that day that she burst in tears, and she said, you see, why is it that I cannot speak with you? Because you're not listening to me. You're so ready to start giving me a sermon, to start correcting me, to start even try to guide me when you are not even listening my dilemma. You're not even letting me completely vent. And that was a big lesson to me. I apologized to Marie and I said, I'm so sorry. Yes, you're right. Because that's another thing that as a parent, we need to accept. Oh, yeah, that's right. I failed there. That was incorrect. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. Let's try let's try to do this again.
Mm,
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk. Please talk, Marie. And she did. And she did. And I had to learn. Let me listen. She needs to vent. Let me let her vent. And then she will be ready to listen to what I have to say and to receive my guidance. And maybe sometimes what the child needs is to vent and then mama's arms to cry. And maybe that is not the day that we need to give the advice. Maybe we have to wait, and in a couple of days, after I pray, after I, I get got some wisdom from God, then okay, let's talk about that, mamita. Then she's ready to listen. But sometimes, as parents, we want to immediately come with something, and we feel that urgency to say something right away. Let's learn to listen.
mm,
Let's learn to listen. And with my children, that happens to me with my four children, and also even with my nephews and nieces. It's the communication is so open that they can even tell when I am struggling.
mm,
Joseph tells me, Marie, all of them. Okay, what's going on with you? They know my face. Something is going on with you. Speak,
mm.
speak, and they listen. And they listen. Sometimes all we need to do is vent. And yes, many times we can share wisdom. We can share wisdom, and we can give some advice. We can speak about another perspective of the issue and help each other. But many times we just want to vent.
Mm.
Yeah.
The children want to vent. And I thank you, Mary, because with you I learned that. And I had used it with my other children. Learn to listen and let the child vent. And children, let mama vent also. And that I think that it's a great, maybe one of the most important tools of communication.
And I think that, especially with what you're saying there, I think that honesty provides accessibility. The more honest you are with each other, even when it's just the honesty to say, I'm wrong,
Right.
it provides a level of accessibility to the other person. I remember growing up that one of the things that I heard most often, and one of the things that I hold to this day, is you or even dad saying, listen, I'm upset, but you're not going to get in trouble for telling the truth.
Right.
You might get in trouble for what you did, but
Right.
you're not going to get in trouble for being honest with me.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and it provided the structure for that communication, because here between you and me, we don't lie. It's
Right.
going to be embarrassing sometimes, it's going to be painful sometimes, but we don't lie. And so, Marie, I want to get into your side of that equation, because you've had moments in struggle, and being the youngest, you've gone through them more recently, as
Mhm.
in where you need to have that communication with a parent. Not that we don't as older children, but you've gone through more things recently
Right.
along that line. And so, what makes you, as a daughter, as a child, in that moment, even if you have to cast your mind back to that conversation where it's like you're not listening to what I'm saying, but even after that, what makes you want to be honest with your parent?
Right. After all of that happened, it was very it everything changed for the both of us. She listened more, and I was able to speak even when it was hard times. I was able to tell her, this is what's been happening, I did this, or this is what I'm feeling. And it was just, it opened a whole nother door to the relationship that we now have. And now, because that happened, I'm able to come to her more comfortably, and I'm able to tell her, Mommy, this happened, and I'm uncomfortable about it, or I'm upset about it. And she listens to me, and she lets me cry it out, and then she lets that time go, like she said, and we talk about it and we work it out together. So now, after that has happened, she's the first one I go to after everything.
Mm. That's great. In that vein of honesty, it's so important for you to have that. I know that a lot of times, even as a young man, a young adult, even married now, there is a temptation to portray something else. Like when your parent asks you, how's everything going? It's very easy to just be like, I'm fine, move on. Even as a parent, sometimes I'm sure it's very easy for when your child asks you, especially if you're supposed to be the stability in
Right.
their life, and they say, "Are you okay?" It's probably very hard to tell your child, "No, I'm not okay right now." And
Yeah.
so it really does provide that accessibility, not just because you're mother and child, not just because that's your parent, but because this is a person being honest with me. This is somebody connecting with me from heart to heart, from mind to mind, and not having any barriers between that. And that vulnerability and that honesty really just strengthens the or really actually the way I should say it, it really widens the door of opportunity for you
Mhm.
to get that accessibility. But moving on, I want to get into more of your personal life, Mom, because I know that a lot of people who have children find it very hard to be in ministry, involved in their church, involved with things going on in the kingdom of God. But you have been an evangelist for as long as I can remember, and you still found a way to make our lives seem the most important to you. And I know that they are. Not It's not just a show that you put on, like you're the most I don't think I've ever doubted that you love me. I don't think I've ever doubted that my mom cares for me. Even though she may be far away right now, I'm on my mom's mind. And so, how do you balance your ministry with your motherhood?
I have learned um, to give 100% to what I'm doing. With that said, when I am ministering, I am giving myself 100% to that ministry, to that conference. Now, when I am with my children, I am giving my 100% to my children or to my grandchildren.
Mm,
I'm 100% with them. I am not taking any phone calls. I am not answering any text messages. Um, I am giving my all to them in that moment,
mm,
because I I fell in that before. I've At the beginning of my ministry, I was, always like I needed to make this phone call, I needed to speak with this person, and I felt that I was robbing my children from time that belonged to them. Then I have learned to no, this is not the way. When I am with them, I'm 100% with them. I can have a conversation with in the phone with Joseph for an hour and a half. I can spend some time with Marie, with my grandbabies, with uh, with my loved ones, in and give myself completely to them. That way, when when the Lord sends me somewhere to to do my ministry, I know that I left their tank full,
Yep.
and I'm looking forward to go back home and be with them again. So I believe that that has been my strategy, my 100% to my children when I'm with them, and give my 100% to ministry. One thing that I would like to add, yes, I do my very best to balance that, but there was a moment in my life and ministry where y- my oldest my two oldest were married. um, Joseph was already getting ready for that. So Joseph was in getting ready to get married, and to move on with his life. And then I had Marie, and she was at a very delicate age, and I had to make a decision. And then that's when we decided to that I was going to take her with me. I spoke with my husband, and I said, I feel that if we don't invest in this, she can suffer. Let's say it like that. She can suffer. She needs me, and the Lord is calling me to go to many different places and more often than before. So that's when we came up with, like, let's see if she can sell clothes, and that's how she started her store. And now she is my traveling partner. And I believe that that time that we spent together help us so much to become best friends. But
Mm.
at the same time, you learn to read the needs of your children. There was a time where Joseph was going through a hard time in his life, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So I had to make a sacrifice, and I started waking up very early in the morning to spend time with Joseph.
Mm.
I did it during high school, and then I did it when when you were working. It meant sometimes wake up at 4 in the morning, right?
Mhm.
To make coffee and to drink coffee with Joseph, to have a conversation with him, to pray with him, to do some devotional. It was not easy. It was
Right.
not easy, but I feel that it was so worth it, So, and I could go through my niece is like my daughter. I don't know how many times a day we speak in the phone. We're always talking. Like, if she leaves work and she has some time, she will be calling me. It's that priority that as parents we need to give to our children. And I believe the same with my oldest, with Omar, with Douglas. We need to make our children a priority and learn to balance what we do with our motherhood.
Mm.
We need to learn to balance it, learning to read their needs. I don't know if this is a correct statement, but learning to read their moments.
Mm. Mhm.
I need to read the moments that each one of my children are going through and be there for them.
Wow.
Hmm.
And Maria, I want to get your opinion on that in a second, but I do want to point out that it is really intentional what you do. And I think that throughout that whole explanation, the idea of intention was very important. That when you see a need in your child, you go to the need. When you have a call from God, you go to the call of God. Because I know that there's a lot of people who say I won't take part in ministry because I have kids, and there's people who say I won't have kids because I have a ministry. And so it is possible to do both. And it's not about making them compete against each other. It's not about making them convenient for each other either. It's about being intentional in each one of them. Because when you try to, at least what I've seen in watching you and even being in ministry myself and being married now, when you try to make ministry fit your ministry suffers. But then when you try to make your life outside of your ministry, whether it be your spouse, whether it be your children, when you try to make them fit your ministry, then your children suffer. And so it's not going 50-50 on either side. It's going 100% at the thing that you are doing in this moment.
I
And I think that it's also very beautiful that you have multiple children of yours waiting to talk to you on the phone, like at any point during the day, that we are, as soon as we get off work or as soon as that we have a spare moment, like, let me call mom. Like that's a beautiful relationship to have, just to know that your phone can ring at any point and one of my kids, it's not going to be because something's wrong, it's just one of my kids wants to talk to me.
right.
And so, Marie, I do want to get your opinion on what she mentioned before and how your relationship with mom has grown to after having traveled with her, because now you're a part of her personal life and her ministry. So how has your relationship with her grown since then?
Yeah, when we started traveling together, it was back in 2021, and since then it was the best decision that she made. Like, even back then I didn't know she was talking to my dad saying, like, if
It
we don't
cost
do this,
us.
we don't do this, she's gonna suffer. I had no idea that conversation happened, but it was so true.
Hmm.
As soon as I started traveling with mom, I got to see the other side, because ever since I was a kid, mom always traveled. So when I went with mom, I got to see this side of her. I got to see her preach to people she didn't even know. And it was just such an amazing experience. And it made us get closer. We bonded so well. The amount of flights that we have been in, the amount of airports that we have been in, that we've just bonded. Like, that's just time that we have together. And then even when we're not traveling, we're just here hanging out. But when we travel, it's just such an amazing time. I get to see her do this amazing ministry. And now I have grown my own business because of it. I have my clothing store that she helped grow. And it's just an amazing thing. Our relationship grew in such an amazing way where I don't think anything's going to be able to break us now.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few questions left, and I know that we've been recording for a long time, but I think that it'd be all right if we finish these questions. I don't want to rush them either. So whatever you guys have to say it, and we'll just give them a long episode, and hopefully they like it. But I know that part of being in church is having a pastor. Part of being in church is having an authority outside of the home. And so we grew up being very close to our pastoral family, and we are still very close with our pastoral family, and we love them very, very much. And I know that Pastor Eason has spoken to us individually as a family, and we've been just blessed by his ministry, by his family's ministry, and we couldn't ask for better pastors. And so I do want to ask though, as a mother, how do you allow someone like a pastor to be a voice of authority in your child's life without feeling territorial? Because I know that there has to be a level of, oh, don't tell my kid what to do, I'll raise my kid. And it can be kind of easy to like fall into that protective mode, that mama bear mode. So how do you allow, or how do you let yourself allow, or what do you say to yourself, whatever it may be, to allow somebody outside of your home, especially someone like a pastor, have that level of influence on your kid?
Well, we value submission, and
Right.
we are fully submitted to our leaders, to our pastor. And that's something that we do, my husband and I, as uh, as in marriage, we are submitted to our pastor as individuals, and I think that it just happens automatically with our children.
Mm,
Our children, that's what they have seen, that our family is submitted to our pastor, and that we are blessed because of that,
yeah,
because God honors, blesses submission.
yeah,
Now, yes, there will come moments where, like, pastor will make decisions where, um, pastor will have to do something that maybe I am not 100% sure, 100% in agreement with it, but what pastor says is what's going to happen.
mm.
And I will make sure that my children don't know that I am not in agreement with it. I will pray to agree with my pastor,
Mm.
but I will submit, and my children will submit to him.
I don't wanna cut you off here, but I do want to maybe make a line of distinction, right? Because I don't think it's a pastor's job either, and maybe if you wanna if you wanna give your thought on this real quick, I don't think it's a pastor's job to necessarily raise your child for you.
Right.
But I do think that when it comes to things of the church, when it comes to things in your child's spiritual walk with God, that there has to be an open channel for your pastor to talk, because I know the way that you phrase things, it could be said that it could be taken that, oh, your pastor dictates what goes on in your home. And
No,
I don't think that that's the case either. I
no.
think that you have been given the opportunity by
Right.
God to raise your child, and your pastor is supposed to have an influence. And
Right.
so but go on and continue what you were saying. I
Yeah.
didn't. I just wanted to make sure that that line was there.
And thank you so much for making that clear. Yes, absolutely. In total agreement with what you said. But when it comes to the church, when it comes to any kind of situation that might arise, that a decision needs to be made, our pastor has total authority in our children's life. And I will. Can I give an example?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Joseph, there was a time in his life where Joseph was struggling in certain areas, and pastor had to make a decision, and it was not something major. Joseph is a drummer, and he loved to be a drummer,
I did.
and then pastor required that he, besides being a drummer, that he would also be a singer. Like, you can sing because you have a voice, and we want you to sing as well. And Joseph didn't want to. No, I don't want to sing, I just want to play the drums. And pastors say, well, you have to do what we tell you to do. You have to, if the Lord gave you a talent, we're going to use both talents. You're going to play, and you're going to also sing. And Joseph was, you know um being, I wouldn't say disrespectful, but he was not,
Stubborn for sure.
right, right, about it. And then pastor decide, okay, then you can sit. You can sit until you decide to do what we're telling you to do. For me as a mother, that was hard, because I'm like, that's not a reason to sit him. That's not, my child is being put in discipline because he doesn't want to sing, because he just want to um, uh, play the drums. And I remember me thinking, but I know such and such that he's doing this and he's doing that, and it's not being put in discipline. So something wanted to in me, but then I said, no, I'm not doing that. I did tell pastor, I'm not in agreement. I don't agree with you, but I am going to submit to what you're doing.
Hmm.
Now, this is the important part of this. Joseph never knew I was upset about it.
Right.
The church never knew I was upset about it. Nobody knew. That was something that stayed between me and my husband,
Mm.
because the way I felt, I didn't want the way I felt to affect the way my children see pastor.
Yeah.
And I was not going to poison anybody in the church. Let me tell you that in the middle of that, like after a few months, I realized, yes, pastor did see something that I did not see,
Yeah.
that needed to be fixed in Joseph's attitude.
Yeah.
And I had to take my hands off it.
Yeah. And
And after those months went through, Joseph went to pastor and said, here I am. I'm willing to do whatever you ask me to do. I want to serve God.
yeah.
And then Joseph was back to the drums and started singing and ended up being one of the worship leaders in our church
Yeah.
and did an amazing job. So and I believe God blessed his ministry, because something that pastor saw at that moment that I didn't see at that moment, that it was a little seed, a little spirit of rebellion
Mm.
that needed to be taken care of. I took my hands off it and I let pastor be pastor,
Right.
without speaking bad about my pastor in my home, without speaking bad about my pastor to nobody in the church.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the Lord blessed us, and I'm glad he did, and I'm glad that he's using Joseph in a great way in ministry.
I want to add, really not add, I really just want to emphasize that point of I never knew. And imagine if, I got sat down for maybe not necessarily a reason that made sense to us at the time, but like you said, a seed of rebellion in me, just a small one, that just I want to do the thing I want to do, not the thing I don't want to do, right? And our pastor saw that, and imagine what would have happened if we would have went home and you would have watered it and nourished that seed. And maybe not in the necessarily in a way where it's like you need to rebel, but in a way where it's like, yes, the way you're feeling, I'm feeling it too. And I don't think that pastor's right. And I don't think that pastor should have done that. That could have grown into something to where I didn't get involved in ministry again. And not
Let's
only,
go, or let's go to another church.
or let's go to another church, to where it's now a blessing to have received punishment before it grew into something that it could have destroyed me,
Right.
but also grew me to where I was and well beyond. Yes, I got the thing that I wanted. I got to play drums, but I didn't go back to pastor and say, "Okay, I really want to play drums. I'll do whatever you want." It was a change in me that I saw in my parents, that they were submitted to pastor not for a certain task, but they were submitted to pastor just to be submitted to pastor. So I didn't go to pastor saying, "Put me in this thing and I'll do this thing for you." It was, "Here I am.
Right.
You do what you want to do with me." And I think that that is really the important bit, is having a relationship with your pastor under the authority that God has placed in his hands.
Right.
Because, and not just because he's a good man or not because he's a good preacher, but because God ordained it that way. You're not always going to agree with what your pastor says, but the moment submission starts is where agreement ends. You, as soon as you disagree and still obey, that's when you know you're in submission. And so, um, moving on to the next question here, I want to talk about, outside of still in the spiritual matter, going into a relationship with God Himself. So, can you touch on the importance of a mother's relationship with God, or her attitude towards the things of God, whether it be church, ministry, things along that nature, and how it can rub off on your children?
Something that I always repeat is that there's a promise to the woman. The Lord says, if you obey me, if you obey my statutes, my commandments, my decrees, I will bless the fruit of your womb.
Mm,
And it's something that has given me peace, knowing if I have a good relationship with God, if I keep my communion with God, if I obey Him, my children will be blessed.
mm,
So I have a relationship with God because I love Him, because He is my God, because He is my Savior. But also, I have a good relationship with God because I know that He will bless my children.
mm.
It is a promise. It is a promise. So it matters what I see my kids doing or going through, but I know that I have a promise. I know that they will be blessed
Right.
if I keep intact and growing and strong my relationship with God.
Right. And it also ties into what we were talking about before. Whatever spirit you bring home is a spirit that your children can pick up.
Right.
Even when you're in a bad mood in general. It may not have anything to do with God. It could just be that when you're angry, I've noticed that when mom is upset, the entire house can get upset because mothers have a way of dictating the emotionality of a house, have a way of dictating the atmosphere of a house, even more than sometimes fathers do. Sometimes fathers don't have that same level of persuasion over the atmosphere because a dad can walk in and be frustrated with work. And I know even as a husband, you walk in, you have weight on your shoulders, but you don't necessarily portray that weight to your spouse or to your children. Rather, you bear the weight for them, and it's an honor and a privilege to do so. And so your emotions may not dictate the house so much, but when a mom, when a mother, when a spouse, even my wife is upset, the atmosphere can change. And
Right.
so I think that it's a very high honor to be able to do that, and it's also a very big responsibility to be able to do that. So you have to be careful what you say, be careful how you act, because your children, especially young children, are watching
Right.
and they're absorbing that.
Right.
And so I want to end today on a lighter note. I know Marie has a couple more questions. And so let's end here with these last couple of questions with probably a bit more of a lighter tone, not necessarily as spiritual. But Marie, go ahead and ask the next two.
Our next question is, what do you wish most for your kids?
That they will always fear the Lord,
Mm.
that they will always fear God and serve Him.
And our next question, if we can remember one thing after you pass away, what would that thing be?
I want my children to know and to remember that even the day that I leave this earth, my prayers will never die.
Yeah.
My prayers will always be alive because prayers won't die. So I make sure that I say many prayers for you guys.
Mm.
I say many prayers for my children, for my loved ones, that they know that even when I'm gone, that they won't see me until we see each other again on in the clouds. Um, my prayers are alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember even before having a stuffed bear that says "My mom prays for me," and I think I still even have it in my closet there, just like my mom prays for me, and it is encouraging to know. I mean, we may not acknowledge it sometimes, saying that like, "Oh, hey mom, thanks for praying for me," and I do want to say thank you for praying for me, and
My
it
pleasure.
is, but it is a comfort to know that your prayers not only go up, but also go on. They go on forever, and I've heard your prayer, and I've had that privilege of, because I've been waking up early in the morning since I was a freshman, probably in high school. I've heard the prayers that you pray for your children, and I mean, we wouldn't be able to sleep through them anyway, but the the prayers that go forth, I remember them to this day. Like, I remember my name being called out in the prayers of my mother, and it gives me strength to walk throughout my day. And
Right.
so, um, Marie, do you have any closing thoughts that you wanna give on any of the stuff that we've talked about? I know that you've been kind of quiet for the majority.
Yeah, I just remember, even now I live with my mom. I'll always hear her pray whenever she is downstairs. She's either reading the word or she's praying, and she has no shame. She will read it out loud. She will pray out loud, and I will wake up. And it's actually, at first, I used to be like, man, why is she praying so loud? I'm trying to sleep. Now, like, when I wake up and I hear her prayers, it, like, I wake up peacefully, and I wake up and that day is great.
Yeah,
Just hearing the prayers of my mom, like, I'll hear my name, I'll hear my brother's names, and it's just such a nice way to wake up, and it's like something I wouldn't trade for anything.
right,
Oh,
right.
you're so sweet. I wanted to add something. Joseph said something to me one day that also taught me to think and pray before I speak to my children.
Mm,
I kept telling Joseph, giving advices about girls, about friends, and about many things. And Marie had said things like that to me as well, which that made me be more cautious when I speak, more cautious, more, seek the face of God before I speak. Joseph said to me, Mom, I want you to think before you give me an advice. I want you to really pray before you give me an advice because I'm going to do what you're saying. So when you're telling me, I don't want you to be friends with such and such, or I don't like this girl for you, or whatever, I'm going to listen to you. So pray before you speak to me because um, I, I I will really do what you say because I'm trusting that you are praying, and I'm
yeah,
trusting that what you're saying to me is because God is saying it to you. And Marie had said the same thing, and she could uh, witness about things that happened before, where, and she brought it up in a meeting that we had with Pastor the other day and made me feel really good. Yes, I did this because mom told me, or I didn't do that because mom told me. But that also gives me a more, even more reason to be in communion with God, and to actually, that what I'm advising my kids is actually God's will. So it is a responsibility, and I'm speaking to the mothers here. Really pray, really pray. It's not because I don't like this, it's not because whatever. It's, make sure that you hear from God when you are giving your children an advice, because we want them to trust in us, and to actually come to us when they need guidance.
right, right.
I can even add on to that, like, the times that she has told me to cut ties with this person. At first, I was just like upset, but I still did it because I knew my mom would pray about that, and she would really seek the voice of God and get her confirmation. Yes, she needs to stop talking to this person. Then she would go to me, and I would be upset about it. And then I would realize my mom was right.
Yeah,
And
and there have been even the people like friendships. Like I remember there were some that I never even seen their face,
mhm.
and I just said, I just feel something, and I went in numerous times. I went to them, to all of them, even to I remember even to Omar, to Douglas, to Bree, to my nieces and nephews. I remember me going, I don't know what it is. Just walk away.
Mm,
I don't know what it is. I cannot tell you what it is, but I feel it in my spirit that you need to walk away from this. And they listen to me. And then later on, we figure out or God show why was it. But it's also, like I said, it's a big responsibility where we need to keep our communion with God and make sure that it's God because they would, mom, they will trust you.
yeah,
So we have to really keep that trust going.
right, right. Absolutely. I have nothing that I even really need to add to that. Like that's just such a it, it's such a I mean, I'll never know it, but it's such an honor and a real responsibility ordained by God to be a mom, and I believe it's one of the most noble things that anyone can do. Like stay-at-home moms, they often get like given a not a bad rap, but sometimes get belittled in the sense where it's like, oh, you don't have a job, all you do is watch your kids. No, that is one of the most noble things that anybody can do is be a good mom. And we've been blessed to have a great mom, best mom in my opinion, but it's such a great thing, especially to see in the church mothers. And again, like I said in the beginning of the episode, it may not be a mom that's directly related to you by blood, but I have many church mothers who, while they're not my biological mom, have still spoken into my life. And when I've heeded their words, my life has gotten better. But especially my mom, when she has spoken, the trust that I have that she is hearing from God, and when she says, I am hearing from God, I feel this in my spirit, because I know she takes that responsibility heavily and with respect and reverence to God, I can trust her words. And so I encourage every mother, every child out there to build that connection, to build that open line of communication, to build that trust in each other so that you can move forward and that your words, each other's words, my words to my mom are trusted, her words to me are trusted. Build that. And that's not something that happens overnight. I remember there was one point where my mom wanted us to be together as a family, and especially when you have a job and you're in school and you're in ministry, sometimes you don't have a lot of time together. You have less time together because you sacrifice time to serve the Lord, and that is a part of it. But I remember that there was a point where my mom wanted to force that time together when we were together to where it was uncomfortable and we didn't fit together well. But and I remember she said, I don't want to be a dysfunctional family. And there's a difference, and I want it came into my head now. I want to say there's a difference between dysfunctional and disconnected. When you're disconnected, you can mend that. That's something that you can build. That's something that you can build on to. It may not start from a perfect place, but it sure can get to a better place than it is now. And so I want to encourage every person, build that relationship with your parent, build that relationship with your child. It's something that you can never replace. It's not something that you're going to have um, a it's not something that there's going to be a duplicate of somewhere else, but it's something that if you take the time to nourish it, if you take the time to grow it, will be one of the best things that you've ever had. And so, do you guys have any other closing remarks that you want to make before we sign off?
I would like to read this portion of the scriptures because
Absolutely.
I believe that it's it sets it up. It's the foundation for a relationship between children and parents. Ephesians 6 says, children, Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. So I absolutely love that portion of the scripture because it speaks to the responsibility of the parent and also of the child. The child need to respect the parents, but at the same, and it's something like I always told my kids, and I always tell my kids, I didn't establish that, God did.
Right.
And but also the parents, do not exasperate your children. Do not do things that you know that will upset them. Do not get on their nerves. Do not make them get angry.
Mhm.
So I believe that if we obey that Bible principle, we will have a beautiful relationship between parents and children.
Right, right. Well, if there's nothing else, then we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, both of you, for taking the time to be here. I love both of you, and I can't wait to see you guys again in person. And thank you again for taking the time to do this. And thank you, everybody who has taken the time to watch this and listen to this. I hope that you've grown. I hope that you have been nourished in knowledge and in spirit. And I hope that relationships with God and relationships with each other just continue to grow and grow and grow. Hope that you enjoyed that episode. I hope that the interview was enlightening for you, and I hope that you were entertained, were enlightened, and just overall benefited by that interview. I had a great time shooting it with my mom and my sister. Thank you both again, and thank you guys for taking the time to watch and listen. I hope that as you continue to watch this show, that even in relationships with your parent, with your child, with God, that relationships are just strengthened, nourished, and just enhanced. And so, yeah, with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you and Godspeed.